Welcome back, friends, to Revenge with Arion. Tonight's story is about loyalty, betrayal, and the sweet taste of justice. Imagine giving 12 years of your life to a company, working late nights, missing family events, putting everything aside for the sake of success, only to be told you're replaceable. That's exactly what happened to Daniel, a man who learned that blind loyalty doesn't always earn respect. But as you'll soon hear, Daniel's revenge was nothing short of legendary. Daniel wasn't just another employee, he was the backbone of his company. When he first joined at 25, the business was still small, a struggling firm trying to find its footing. Daniel came in as a junior project manager, wide-eyed, eager, and willing to do whatever it took to prove himself. Over the years, he did just that. He stayed long after others clocked out, poring over spreadsheets and fixing problems before anyone else even noticed. He mentored new hires, turning fresh graduates into sharp, confident workers. He became the guy everyone turned to when things went wrong. The steady hand in the storm. And above him was Mr. Clark, the boss. In those early days, Clark treated Daniel well. He praised his dedication, gave him small bonuses, and called him the future of the company. Daniel believed him. For 12 long years, he believed that loyalty and hard work would one day be rewarded. But slowly, things began to change. As the company grew, so did Clark's ego. Where he once shook Daniel's hand after big projects, now he brushed off his contributions, acting like success was entirely his doing. He took Daniel's presentations, slapped his own name on them, and basked in the applause. Promotions that Daniel had earned went to younger hires, flashy, confident, but often leaning on Daniel behind the scenes to get their work done. Still, Daniel stayed loyal. He told himself it was just a phase, that Clark still respected him deep down. After all, 12 years of service had to mean something, right? Then came the first real sting. At a company meeting, Daniel presented a major project he had spent months perfecting. He spoke with calm authority, laying out strategies that would save the firm millions. But when Clark stood to close the meeting, he casually said, "And thanks to the team for putting this together. That's the kind of work I expect around here." No mention of Daniel's name, no credit, just a wave of the hand. Colleagues gave Daniel sympathetic glances, but no one spoke up. Daniel forced a smile, but inside, his stomach twisted. That night, he stayed late again, staring at the empty office, wondering if all his sacrifices had been for nothing. And then came the breaking point. It was a Friday evening. Daniel had just finished another 12-hour day when he stopped by the break room to grab his coat. That's when he overheard voices, Clark and one of the senior managers, laughing together. "Oh, he's fine," Clark said dismissively. "But let's be honest, he's replaceable. Anyone can do his job. He's just reliable. That's all." They both chuckled, and Clark added, "If he ever leaves, we'll find another one just like him. Probably cheaper, too." Those words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. 12 years of loyalty, late nights, and sacrifices, and to Clark, he was nothing more than replaceable. Daniel walked out of the office that night with his mind racing. All the missed birthdays, the weekends spent at his desk, the years of trust, it all came crashing down. For the first time in 12 years, Daniel didn't feel loyal. He felt betrayed. And betrayal, as you know, has a way of planting the seed for revenge. The weekend after that fateful conversation, Daniel couldn't get Clark's words out of his head. Replaceable, it echoed like a curse. He tried to distract himself with family, with hobbies, but every quiet moment was filled with the sting of betrayal. On Monday morning, Daniel walked back into the office, the same hallway, the same co-workers, but nothing felt the same anymore. Where once he saw purpose, now he saw chains. Still, he did what he always did. He worked hard. That week, he delivered 2 major reports ahead of schedule and solved a client issue that could have cost the company millions. But instead of praise, Clark gave him a nod and muttered, "That's what you're paid for." Something inside Daniel shifted that day. For years, he had believed hard work spoke for itself. Now he realized the truth. In Clark's eyes, loyalty was weakness, not strength. The situation grew worse in the weeks that followed. Clark began funneling Daniel's responsibilities to younger managers. They asked Daniel endless questions. "How should I structure this? Can you check my numbers? What do I say to the client?" And then presented Daniel's answers as their own. Clark applauded them, while Daniel stood silent in the background. He was becoming invisible in the very company he helped build. The real breaking point came when Daniel's request for a raise was flatly denied. 12 years of service, glowing performance reviews, and profits that had doubled under his management. Yet Clark sat across the table and said, "Daniel, you're already at the top of your pay bracket. Besides, Like I've said before, you're reliable. You should be grateful you even have stability here. Grateful. Daniel forced a polite smile, but inside, he was boiling. He had given 12 years, and in return, he was told to be grateful. That night, Daniel went home, sat in his quiet living room, and faced a hard truth. Clark would never respect him, no matter how hard he worked, no matter how many sacrifices he made. To Clark, Daniel would always be replaceable, but here's the thing: Daniel wasn't powerless. One evening, over dinner with an old colleague who had moved on to another firm, Daniel let slip a few frustrations. His friend leaned in and said, "Daniel, you don't realize how valuable you are. The competition knows your work. They talk about you. If you ever wanted to walk, companies would line up to hire you." For the first time in months, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The thought lingered. Could he really leave? Could he start fresh after 12 years? That week, Daniel quietly updated his resume. He didn't tell anyone, not his co-workers, not even his closest friends at the office. He reached out to one or two trusted contacts in the industry, just to test the waters. The response shocked him. Within days, he had 3 interview requests, big firms, direct competitors of Clark's company. They weren't just interested, they were eager. These firms knew his track record. They knew he had been the backbone of Clark's success. And unlike Clark, they saw Daniel not as replaceable, but as indispensable. Each interview felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, Daniel wasn't begging for respect, he was being courted, offered leadership positions, higher salaries, even equity shares. But Daniel wasn't just thinking about leaving anymore. He was thinking about payback, because he realized something powerful. If he joined a rival firm, he wouldn't just leave Clark's company. He would take his experience, his knowledge, and his client relationships with him. And Clark, he would finally understand just how replaceable Daniel really was. Daniel didn't act right away. He knew better than to storm into Clark's office and quit on the spot. No, if he was going to leave, he was going to do it in a way that Clark would never forget. Step 1 was simple: observe and prepare. Daniel started paying closer attention to the company's operations. For years he had been the silent problem solver, the man behind the curtain who kept everything running smoothly. But now, he began to notice just how fragile the system really was. The younger managers Clark had promoted, they weren't ready. They leaned on Daniel for everything: how to structure contracts, how to handle clients, how to manage deadlines. Without him, the company's foundation was much weaker than Clark realized. And Daniel was taking notes. Meanwhile, Daniel continued his interviews in secret. Each meeting confirmed what he already knew: he wasn't just valuable, he was in demand. One rival firm in particular stood out. They didn't just offer him a higher salary. They offered him a leadership role and full control over building his own team. It was tempting, but Daniel wasn't just thinking about his future. He was thinking about justice. The turning point came during a Monday morning staff meeting. Clark strutted into the room, full of confidence, and began assigning new projects. One of them was a high-profile client contract worth millions. Daniel knew the client personally. He had nurtured the relationship for years. But Clark casually handed the project to a younger manager. "Daniel, you'll assist as needed," Clark said dismissively, as though 12 years of work meant nothing. The younger manager shot Daniel a nervous look. They both knew who would end up carrying the weight of the project. Daniel felt the anger rising inside him, but instead of snapping back, he smiled calmly and said, "Of course, Mr. Clark, happy to help however I can." That was the moment Daniel decided on his plan. Step 2. Build his exit. Over the next few weeks, Daniel quietly negotiated with the rival firm. Not only did they want him, but they also wanted his clients, the very relationships Clark had always taken credit for. Daniel didn't poach anyone outright, but he made it clear to the firm that if he came on board, certain clients would likely follow. The rival firm was thrilled. They gave Daniel everything he asked for: a higher salary, a better title, and most importantly, freedom. But Daniel wasn't finished yet. Step 3. Set the trap. Step 3. Set the trap. Daniel knew timing was everything. If he left too soon, Clark might recover. If he left too late, the opportunity might slip away, so he waited. He worked late, helped the younger managers, and kept the company afloat, just as he always had. To Clark, nothing seemed unusual, but beneath the surface, Daniel was quietly transferring knowledge, making copies of key documents, and preparing for the perfect moment. And then, fate handed him the opportunity. The $1 million client project Clark had reassigned. The younger manager bungled it. Deadlines were missed, numbers didn't add up, and the client grew frustrated. Clark, desperate to save face, turned to Daniel at the last minute. "Fix this," he barked. "Do whatever it takes to keep them." Daniel did fix it. He stayed late for a week, reorganized the mess, and salvaged the deal. The client was so impressed that they scheduled a private meeting with Daniel to discuss future opportunities. And in that meeting, the client said something that made Daniel's decision final. "Daniel, we trust you. If you ever decided to move to another firm, let us know. Our loyalty is with you, not the company." That was the last confirmation Daniel needed. Clark thought he was replaceable. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. The Monday morning sun spilled through the office windows as Daniel walked in with a calm smile. No one could have guessed the storm brewing beneath his steady expression. Clark was in his office, barking orders over the phone. When Daniel knocked on the door, Clark barely looked up. "What is it, Daniel? Make it quick." Daniel stepped inside, placed an envelope on the desk, and said in a calm, even voice, "I'm resigning, effective 2 weeks from today." Clark froze. The phone slipped from his hand. For a moment, he just stared at Daniel, as though he hadn't heard correctly. "You're what?" "I'm resigning," Daniel repeated. "I've accepted another opportunity." Clark's face turned red. He leaned back in his chair and scoffed. "Another opportunity? Don't be ridiculous. You've been here 12 years. You're not going anywhere." Daniel simply smiled. "I am, and I want to thank you for everything I've learned here. But it's time to move on." Clark's arrogance flared. "You think you're that important? Daniel, you're replaceable. I'll have someone in your seat by the end of the week." Daniel nodded politely. "I'm sure you will." But inside, Daniel was smiling for real, because he knew Clark had just underestimated him for the very last time. The news spread through the office like wildfire. Colleagues whispered in shock. Daniel, the dependable one, the man who held the company together, was leaving. The younger managers looked panicked. They leaned on him for everything. Without him, they were lost. By the end of the day, Daniel's inbox was flooded with quiet messages from coworkers. "Is it true? Where are you going? Please don't leave us with him." Daniel kept his replies simple. He didn't brag. He didn't gloat. He simply said, "It's time for a new chapter." But behind the scenes, the wheels were already in motion. 2 days later, Daniel met privately with his most trusted clients. He explained his decision honestly. He was moving to a new firm, one where he would have the freedom to serve them even better. And just as he suspected, the clients didn't hesitate. "Daniel, wherever you go, we'll follow." By the end of the week, nearly every major client had given Daniel their word. They weren't loyal to Clark's company, they were loyal to him. Meanwhile, back at the office, chaos erupted. The young managers tried to step up, but they stumbled at every turn. Reports came in late, numbers were wrong, clients grew restless. Clark stormed through the halls shouting, demanding answers. And every time, the answer was the same. Daniel used to handle that. Clark tried to call Daniel into his office again. "Look, let's talk about this. I can maybe arrange a small raise. You've been with us a long time." But Daniel had already moved past him. "It's too late, Mr. Clark. My decision is final." The words hit Clark like a slap. For once, his arrogance cracked. He tried to mask his panic, but Daniel saw it in his eyes. Clark had finally realized the truth. Daniel wasn't replaceable. The day of Daniel's departure arrived. The office gathered awkwardly in the break room for his farewell. Clark forced a stiff smile, muttering something about new opportunities and moving forward, but everyone could see the tension in his jaw. Daniel, however, stood tall. He thanked his colleagues sincerely, shook hands, and left with quiet dignity. But the real blow hadn't even landed yet, because what Clark didn't know was that in just 1 week, Daniel would be sitting in the executive chair of Clark's biggest rival, and the clients Clark thought were his. They were already planning to walk out the door and straight into Daniel's new office. And that brings us to the end of today's story. What do you think? Did justice find its way home? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story. This is Revenge with Arion, where every ending reminds us, karma always arrives, right on